Well, a stark warning from Saskatchewan today. Premier Scott Moe is accusing the federal government of keeping the province in the dark over trade talks with India. Canada and India have been talking on and off since 2010 about a renewed trade agreement, but Canada announced just ahead of this G20 summit that it was pausing those talks. This comes just 3 months after the two countries committed to sealing the deal this year. I'm joined by Saskatchewan Minister of Trade and Export Development, Jeremy Harrison. Minister, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
I wonder if you could help us understand, what is your understanding as to why Canada has paused its trade talks with India?
Well, I'll get to that. My first concern, and just by way of background, the relationship between Saskatchewan and India really is a very, very important trade relationship. Nearly 40% of the yearly trade between Canada and India is really trade between Saskatchewan and India. So for us, this is a really, really important market, over $1 billion a year. We've been very supportive of engaging with India on a early progress trade agreement. I've met with Minister Goyal, their Minister of Commerce, on 2 occasions to discuss. We have been supportive of the Government of Canada in pursuing this agreement. And we've been very concerned, though, that we have been given no updates as provinces through this negotiation, literally in any way, shape, or form. And then we were obviously deeply concerned to hear in the media last week about the negotiations being paused with no consultation, with no discussion with provinces. And obviously for Saskatchewan, this is a really significant thing, and we are very, very concerned about it.
Okay, so obviously I can understand your desire to see greater trade with a market of such significance, given the structure of the Saskatchewan economy, but have you had any answer from the federal government or any explanation as to the reason for this pause? None at all?
None at all. And in fact, I wrote to Minister Ng at the end of July asking for a update of any kind of phone call, a letter in response, any sort of update at the officials level. None was offered at that point. And then obviously when we heard about the collapse of that discussion last week through the media, that added to that further concern. So the answer is we have not heard a single thing to this day about why or how this happened.
Okay, you've sent another letter to the government, and you say that the federal government is putting domestic political interests ahead of the national economic interests. What do you mean precisely by that?
Right. Well, I mean, we've seen this before, and I'm not going to get into all of the details as to why that is, but I can tell you this. The Liberal Party of Canada believe it to be in their domestic political interest to have a negative relationship with Prime Minister Modi and his government. And because of that, they have chosen to, again, put that domestic political interest ahead of the national interest in this negotiation. And, we are very concerned. And frankly, I'm pretty angry about it, given the fact that I think we had been making some real progress. As a province, we had offered and in fact used our offices, including our international office in India, to advance that discussion with the Indians with regard to agricultural access, with regard to non-tariff trade barriers, where we felt that there was really opportunity to make progress. And I think the Indians were fully prepared to engage in that discussion. In fact, I know they were. And to have that derailed in the lead up to what has turned into a debacle for Prime Minister Trudeau in India is deeply frustrating. This happened in 2018 as well. In the immediate aftermath of that catastrophe, we ended up with a situation where Saskatchewan trade with India went from over $1 billion a year to $500 million a year. And who paid the price for this? It wasn't Justin Trudeau. It was Saskatchewan farmers. It was Saskatchewan miners who were able to sell much less of our product and our commodity into that Indian market.
But how do we know with any certainty, or how do you know with any certainty that the issue at this point is from the Canadian side, right? I mean, we've seen the issues around foreign interference in elections. There are deep concerns about what India is doing there. India has expressed displeasure with Sikh protesters in this country who may support an independent Sikh homeland and want the government of Canada to crack down on that. And we've seen, globally, they're buying more Russian oil, they're buying a lot of Russian weapons. I mean, how do we know Canada is the problem in this two-way relationship, and maybe rather than the Modi government itself?
By way of example, I had the opportunity to sit down with the Indian energy minister about a year ago. He literally told me that he would buy every single molecule of Canadian energy that we could get to coast and to market in India. The reality is that we can't get that commodity to Tidewater, and that's a whole other discussion around pipelines. But
Sure.
The fact is that the Indians want to buy more commodities and goods from Canada. A stable, reliable, long-term partner. That is what we have said around the world from Saskatchewan is our value proposition as a partner. There is a tremendous desire on the part of countries around the world, including India, to buy more from Canada. That was really evidenced by the fact that despite the political challenge that Indians chose to pursue this early progress trade agreement with Ottawa, to have this all derailed again because of the Liberal Party's political interest is deeply frustrating. And it is Saskatchewan producers who are actually paying the price of all of this.
But the Modi government, Minister, the Modi government wants Canada to sort of crack down on some of the protests they've seen from Sikh Canadians outside their embassies and stuff. I mean, how do we know they're not trying to leverage Canada to deal with these issues, which are a real thorn in Prime Minister Modi's side in India?
I would say this. I mean, I've seen a couple of the posters that have been going around that literally call for violence against Indian diplomats. I could only imagine the response, the rightful response of the government of Canada had we seen that same thing occurring in capitals around the world, calling for violence against Canadian diplomats. I think that the desire the Indians have for that particular issue to be addressed is not an unrealistic proposition. So, I mean, there are real concerns there, but really where I'm coming from as the province of Saskatchewan is that because of a number of these bilateral issues where I do hold the government of Canada and Justin Trudeau accountable for, we are going to have our producers paying the price because of it.
No, and look, I can certainly understand the economic incentives for you there. But in the absence of clarity right now, and in the absence of that relationship getting better quick, what do you want to see from the federal government on this in the short term that might alleviate some of your concerns?
Well, stop doing damage. That would be kind of step one. Stop making it worse. That would be step two. And ultimately, we're going to need to re-engage on this. And I'm not quite sure that this current government is going to be able to do that. What we are going to do, though, I can tell you, as a provincial government that has worked very hard in India and on building the relationship in India, is we're going to continue to engage. I think there is a sophisticated understanding that Justin Trudeau is not all of Canada, that there are governments at the subnational level that perhaps have a very different view of that relationship going forward. But, I'm hopeful that there is going to be a federal government at some point in the future that is going to be prepared to engage in good faith on advancing our national interest with the government of India.